Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Yance. This is part one. Okay, I have a guest with me today. I have Damien Swaby. He is a filmmaker and a podcaster. He does a podcast called Filmmaker Conversation Podcast with Damien Swaby. How you doing, Damien?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's great. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in London, England, to southeast London to be exact. And yeah, it was a fun time in South London. Very, very different. I go back to the other side of London often, and I enjoyed it. And now I live, well, for the last 22 years, I've been in North London, the other side of the river. Yeah, I find that the area is quite different that I've grown up in and stuff. But yeah, I grew up in London, basically.
Hmm. Do you find that London influenced you as a filmmaker?
Completely, completely. I mean, London within itself is, I mean, there's London and there's the rest of Britain. You know, it's its own place. It's a juggernaut with so many stories, ideas, people to meet. I've literally, I can go through life and think, okay, I've had this part of my life, I've had another part of my life, I've had another part of my life, and it's all been within London in very, very different ways, in very different circumstances, around very different people. You can literally live in London and you can be around the corner from, oh gosh, I forgot his name. How can I forget his name? Tom Cruise's film Mission Impossible. There's a blonde British guy in it.
Oh,
I forgot his name now.
oh man. In the first one? Are we talking about the first film?
I think the first one, yeah. Definitely
Brian
the
De
first
Palma
one.
one?
Yeah. I think he did, and he was in maybe the second and third. I can't remember, but basically I'm saying someone who can be in that film,
Yeah, yeah.
in a predominant role, and he could live 20 minutes away from you, and you could be in maybe a less desirable part of London. So, for
Mm,
example, he would be in, he at one point lived in Crouch End, which is a nice place, and I was in Wood Green, which isn't
mm,
known as a nice place. And that's how things cross over and overlap. And it often feels like people are living on top of each other or living alongside each other, but yet they're living in very different worlds. And I think when you have that to learn from, influence you, inform you, it can have such an impact on how you see the world, especially if you travel a lot like I do, and how you create stories and podcasts and interview people and everything like that.
Do you think it sounds very similar to like New York City, which
Yeah.
I've lived in, but I didn't grow up in New York City. You growing up in London, you were probably exposed to a lot of things at a very young age. Do you think that
Mm.
that influenced you as well?
Yeah, that would really, really have influenced me because I've met so many people that a good example would be in England where they have grown up in a countryside type area, something called at the end of it has Shire, like Oxfordshire or something
Yeah.
like that. And they spend so much, I wouldn't say nurtured or kind of belittle their upbringing or their life, but around kind of family and friends, people live in cottages and all of that type of stuff. And then they come to London and it's like, whoa, this is a big difference. So many different accents, so many different people, so many different types of jobs, so many types of people, different financial levels in their life. And I can see how they might be a bit naive to it or guttural or excited in a way that I kind of shrug my shoulders or I've shrugged my
Mm.
shoulders in that sense. So growing up around it, really, I would have seen so much from good and bad and left and right, up and down. In 1 year, I remember I would be in a bar in Lewisham and seeing kind of crazy violence. The following week, I was in a bar across the river, and it was just, completely different. Completely
Mm.
different. I got introduced to Clive Owen's agent at the time. That type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
So it's a, yeah, it's
yeah,
it's the one thing here, one thing there. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
very similar to New York City. Um,
And
so
that
which came?
sorry, that and on the public transport system, that journey between Lewisham and the other location would have been about an hour and a half, to put that in perspective. In a car, maybe it took an hour.
The only thing I don't like about London is the tube doesn't run all night.
It does now on weekends.
Oh, it does now
Yeah,
on week. Oh, that's good.
yeah. But I get what you mean. There were many times where we'd be at a party or a nightclub or something, and you can't get the tube home, so you'd end up getting a night bus. And believe me, those night buses. I mean, there's stories within itself.
I've had to do that when I
Okay.
was in London in 2016, like right after Brexit.
Okay.
That was the thing I saw. I was like, oh wait, we're not going to be able to get. Oh, I'm gonna have to ride this.
Yeah. What part of London were you staying in? Sorry.
I'm trying to remember. I don't know. It's like
Yeah,
it's all
fair
kind of
enough.
like a breeze to me. So I was there for like acting. I
Oh,
mean,
nice.
I
Yeah.
literally got off the plane and was put in, the class, and I was just like, I'm gonna need a minute here because I couldn't sleep on the plane.
Yeah, understandable.
But no, I love London. It's such a cool place. I think if I looked at pictures and stuff, I'd be able to tell you where it is. I'll get back.
Yeah, let me
I
know.
need to think
Yeah.
I need to think about that. Um, so which came first, a love of film or a love of books?
Oh, I love a film. I love a film. Yeah. I loved comic books. It's funny, I loved comic books as a kid, but I'm not the
Yeah.
biggest comic book film fan. I think when I first saw the X-Men film, I loved that because for years as a kid, a lot of my friends and I would be like, wow, imagine if they made a film like X-Men, we'd be in like nursery and infants thinking about that. And then they finally did. But I think maybe it got to a bit of overkill with some of the Marvel and DC films where it might have felt like, oh, none of this means anything anymore. But definitely film came first for me. I really remember because in England we had this thing on ITV, it's our third channel. And in the autumn, they had the tagline, movies are free on ITV. And they'd have all of these great blockbuster films that you could maybe only get in Blockbuster Video or something like that.
Yeah.
And we'd get them on ITV. So autumn, for like 2 years or so as a kid, it was brilliant. You some of the films, and what I liked about back then, it would be the range of films. So you would still have, say, an obvious kind of blockbuster like Beverly Hills Cop, which was a juggernaut success in England as well as America, all around the world. And at the same time, you'd get The Color of Money, which is a very different film, a very dramatic film. I remember as a kid being how excited the pool game was in that film. There was one scene in particular, the pool game was brilliant. And as I grow older, I realized, the cinematography involved in making that game of pool so dynamic, and the camera movement when is it Paul Newman was kind of conjuring up his evil plan, and Tom Cruise was the young gullible kid, and he had the hot girl, and all of that stuff. The way it came into it was amazing for me, and I really loved that. And the dialogue scenes, even as a youngster, I really enjoyed strong dialogue amongst characters because I was intrigued and because I was looking at things. Obviously, as a kid, you don't really understand. You don't understand. Whereas the enjoyment of Beverly Hills Cop is kind of universal. And it's like, wow, this young, cool cop, he's so funny and he's frying people over stuff and it's fights. So along that period as a kid, and even we have corner stores in England, corner shops we call them. They're like grocery stores. But back then you could rent videos from some of them as well. So they haven't have a short amount. So I used to love going there, and one of my chores was to get the paper on Sunday. It's a thing I had to do, which I didn't mind because I got money to rent a video. So I remember getting He-Man Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren.
Canon films, yeah.
Yeah, all the Canon films. We could do a podcast about Canon, believe me. So getting that, and obviously, watching now as an adult, it's a different experience. But as a kid, I mean, Dolph Lundgren looked like he was made in a lab to play He-Man.
Yeah,
He
he
was
did.
just literally that. So that was the experience of running to the shop and running back with He-Man. Um,
And Skeletor,
and
Frank Langella as
yeah,
Skeletor.
were brilliant. So it's definitely film first for me, because film has that kind of, it embodies all the arts, in my opinion. And it
Yeah.
also allows storytelling that a book also allows, but in my opinion, just on a different level.
For me, the film that like really I think opened me up to was we had HBO, and I would just kind of fall asleep, and sometimes I'd wake up to a certain movie, and I think it was like Eyes Wide Shut. That was my
Oh,
first
okay.
like Kubrick film, and that
Yeah.
really like kind of opened my eye. I think not even realizing it opened my eyes to cinematography and
Yeah.
to because I just took it in. It's such a fascinating film, the way it's shot and the colors
Mm,
and everything. I think in some ways it kind of worked over me on that. And
yeah.
then what was it, the Terminator 2 Ultimate Edition DVD
Oh,
had all these special features talking about like filmmaking and every aspect of filmmaking. Like it was just like a diary of every single thing you could ever think about in
yeah.
filmmaking. I think that helped me. Like they had the storyboards and they had the script and like
Wow.
just like you don't get DVDs like that anymore. Now they're so like,
No.
oh, get a few featurettes, but like it was almost like a library to like a film school and like understanding, production design and
Yeah.
things. So those are the things that I think like really, made me kind of like understand the language of film, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Understandable.
was there a certain film that spoke to you? Like very specific film? You mentioned, The Color of Money, but is there one that
I've,
like you
I've
just remember and go, wow, this is kind of what I want to do.
what I want to do, in many ways, because
Mm,
as a kid, I remember watching Mo Better Blues,
mhm.
Spike Lee film, and Denzel Washington, Wesley Snipes, and Cinda Williams, and just a great cast. And I remember watching it and just thinking, wow, because I love jazz music as well. It's one of my thing.
Yeah.
And watching it and thinking to myself, wow, man, that's how, I want to live life as an adult. I want to be in a kind of cool group. And they had Wesley Snipes had that really cool apartment, and so did Denzel Washington, and the outfits and the life and everything. So that spoke to me on that way. And to this day, just seeing how they were lit on stage was really amazing. It just the elegance that was brought to that film, what we saw on screen with a predominantly black cast. I haven't seen at that point, and maybe even
Mm,
now, I haven't seen that type of elegance in terms of the cinematography, which I was really drawn to, and the story itself, and the choices the lead character had to make, being a player with two women that both adored him and everything. So that really spoke to me in terms of, as a kid, looking at my future and imagining uh, what it could look like if I was
yeah.
in that type of situation. But it was an amalgamation of films that spoke to me to make me think, oh, okay, what do I want to do? Because I think of the digital era, because getting into film, as you know, if you was going to say, oh, one day I'll make a feature film, I just get some 35 millimeter Fujifilm stock, I'll just get some lights with that, then it's impossible, in my opinion, for many of us, unless we have a
Yeah.
certain disposable income. But the digital era allowed us to pick up DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, that we can get script writing software. We can order some of the great books. Roger Corman's book I ordered many years back. I got it on eBay for like £2. That's
Mm,
like $1.50. So I could educate myself with various courses. I could do all sorts of things to enable me to get into the filmmaking and video producing situations. And the reason why I thought about it like that is because I watched a Barry Jenkins film called Medicine for Melancholy. And that is
mm,
a really kind of small story. It's a feature, about a couple. Well, no, they're not a couple. The man would like it to be a couple, but
mm,
I won't give any spoilers away. But reading about how it was made, why it was made, and I've spoken to the Steadicam operator in the film, and read
mm,
about it. I thought, well, in this digital world now, stories like Medicine for Melancholy, and some of the documentaries. Fog of War is a documentary I like, and many other documentaries. These things I'm capable of doing them because I have the power in my hands, and that was influenced. I don't know. Are you aware of the mumblecore movement?
No, no.
It was a
Tell me.
movement made popular by things like films like Funny Ha Ha. It's associated closely with J and Mark Duplass, but they don't
Yeah, I
associate
know that.
them. Yeah, they don't associate themselves with mumblecore, as far as I'm aware. But it's a movement for indie filmmakers, and it was made popular using cameras like the Sony Z1. So you could go in, run and gun, guerrilla style filmmaking with small
Yeah.
crews. So it was reading about people like I mentioned, and thinking about how they've told their stories, and even scenes like from 9.5 weeks.
Mm.
Not the kinky ones for anyone listening. I mean, like even though Kim Basinger does look a certain way in that film, but I digress. So the film, some of those scenes could be made in this indie digital way that I'm a part of and love being a part of. And that's what made me get into things, because of the amalgamation of information, the way stories are being told, the way that I knew I could tell these stories without having to rely on, because I'm British, I live in England, basically government programs, British institutions, and a formulaic way that doesn't desire any kind of responsibility to different top storytellers. I didn't want to be a part of that. So this is why and how I got into filmmaking.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.